As President Trump spends the weekend at his estate in New Jersey, he's seeing his trade policy ballooning into a trade war with China. And today, the U.S. hit the country with $34 billion worth of tariffs. China has already retaliated and is accusing the U.S. of starting the largest trade war in economic history. For more, we bring in CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid, who's traveling with the president. Paula, I want to start with this trade war. You know, given the retaliation that we've seen, how does the White House explain their approach with taking on China?
Well, this is something the president talked about on the campaign trail quite frequently. He's very upset about what he perceives as a very unfair trade deficit with China. He says that they take advantage of organizations like the WTO. They steal intellectual property from U.S. companies, use it for their own gain, and are overall just very unfair to U.S. companies. So his solution has been to impose these $34 billion worth of tariffs in an effort to get more favorable trade agreements with one of our biggest trading partners. But the concern is that this was the first shot fired in an actual trade war that a lot of people have been concerned about. And while the administration says they want to open free markets, they want to support free trade, tariffs are literal barriers to new markets, not only for our companies over here, but to international companies as well. And as you noted in the intro, China has also imposed retaliatory tariffs, which they had signaled that they would do, but they said they would not fire the first shot. And what we've seen with other tariffs that the president has imposed, specifically steel, we've seen, well, that has actually had a modest impact, a positive impact on some steel companies here in the U.S. Some of the downstream manufacturers who use steel, they have not actually fared very well because of this tariff, and we have seen some layoffs. And many experts say that when all of this shakes out with these tariffs between the U.S. and China, it is most likely going to be the U.S. economy that suffers.
So, Paul, I actually want to turn now, moving from this topic over to Scott Pruitt, who submitted his resignation as EPA chief. We know both members from both parties have actually applauded the move. Democrats seem to have reservations about his replacement, Andrew Wheeler. What do we know about him?
That's right. Well, Wheeler, in terms of policy, appears to be more of the same. The president said on Air Force One last night that he expects that Wheeler will continue with a lot of the same policies that give Democrats pause. Pruitt, one of the reasons he was able to keep his job despite dozens of government inquiries and investigations and claims from both sides of the aisle that he was acting unethically, he was able to keep his job in part because he was implementing a lot of the things the president said he would, rolling back a lot of Obama-era policies having to do with emissions, automobile emissions, coal, things like that. So when the president signaled that he would love to keep Wheeler on, he's very happy with him as a deputy because he will continue with the administration's EPA agenda. That is what is giving Democrats concern.
You know, the president, we also know, Paula, we're watching closely this weekend, that he will announce his Supreme Court nominee on Monday for Supreme Court justice. And beyond just reviewing the candidate's qualifications, what else do you think the president's looking for in his pick?
Well, traditionally, you would look at this point, if you've narrowed it down to 3 or 4 people, ultimately their credentials are all going to be very similar. Their ideology will be quite similar. But you'd look for anything that could be a roadblock in terms of their confirmation, any sort of scandal. The last thing this administration needs right now is someone who has a personal or a professional scandal. Those can come certainly from decisions you've made in your personal life, anything in your professional life, like we saw in the confirmation hearings for Justice Thomas, or anything in your opinions. The longer you've been on the bench, the higher your stack of opinions that you've authored where someone could find something objectionable. But, of course, many things the president does, he's taking a less traditional approach, and it seems to be more about gut, about feeling, about his perception about a lot of these people. And he says that he has a very good feeling about all of them, but he will try to make up his mind by Sunday and make the big announcement on Monday.
So potentially we could hear this weekend. You never know if the president wants to reveal that at some point.
You never know.
We never know. I also want to ask you, though, on the issue of reuniting families separated at the border. We understand that the administration is asking to extend a deadline that's looming. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. A judge had set a deadline for the administration to reunite children who had been separated from their parents who came across the border illegally. There were 2 deadlines. One is on the 10th. That would be all children under the age of 5. That's several hundred children, we believe, would need to be reunited by next week. And then by July 26th, all of the children who had been separated, which right now that would probably be north of 1,500 additional children, would need to be reunited with their parents. But the administration is saying that's just not logistically feasible unless you make the vetting process to reunite these children with their parents a lot less cumbersome, to sort of lower the standard in terms of how we vet people we return them to. It does not seem logistically possible to reunite all of these children in that timeline, Rena. So even if the judge was well-intentioned, it is likely that as this moves through the courts, a judge will eventually extend that timeline, because it just doesn't seem like there's any way for the government to be able to meet either one of those deadlines.
Okay, Paula Reid, thank you for joining us, Paula.